Hey everybody, we have a special guest in the house. We have none other than Tony Serino. You know him from Locked On Steelers. He's the Steelers representative on AFC North Talk and has his own YouTube channel called Steelers Country with Tony Serino, where he gives his insight and opinion on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Please hit that like and subscribe button. You don't want to miss any of the daily content and the weekly lives that we do and our special guests. With that being said, guys, I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers, and welcome to the Huddle. Tony, my man, how you doing tonight?
Daniel, happy to be here. I appreciate you having me on. I'm always excited to talk about these Steelers.
Oh yeah, me too. Especially this year. We were talking a little bit off air that the temperature of the air seems to be changing when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going into this preseason, there was quite a bit of doubt. Now there seems to be a little bit of optimism, especially in the quarterback room, so to speak. We were talking a little bit before the show, and I was talking to you saying that I was actually present on the live chat, when you were on AFC North Talk with the guys there and Kenny Pickett was selected. I saw you leave. I actually saw you leave the screen and come back. My question to you is, how do you feel now? And, I know you were in training camp and you saw Kenny Pickett, from draft night to training camp through preseason. If your opinion has changed, when has it changed?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, yeah, I mean, certainly, there's nothing bad you can say about Kenny right now, right? I mean, like, the guy has not, through 2 preseason games, the guy has not thrown a bad pass yet. I mean, I think he's thrown, 3 incompletions. 2 were to a guy who was on the team for 48 hours. The other one was a spike, right? Those are 3 incompletions, throwing 2 touchdowns, right? I mean, the guy is I'm just waiting for him to throw a bad pass at this point, right? Just to make sure that this kid is actually human, because otherwise, we're looking at the second coming here. As far as has my opinion changed? Look, the reason why, if you go back to that draft night, the reason why I was not excited about Kenny Pickett is not because I thought, oh no, they just drafted a bust, right? As I said at the time, I almost would prefer a bust than to what I think what I thought Kenny would be, right? My worry with Kenny is he's going to peak out at someone like an Andy Dalton or a Derek Carr, right? The kind of quarterback that, in my opinion, you're going to have a really hard time in the modern NFL winning a Super Bowl with. But, right, the beauty of right now is that we're just on this rocket ship going up, right? And I don't know when this rocket ship's going to end. Maybe it does end in Andy Dalton. Maybe it does end at Derek Carr. But maybe it doesn't end there. Maybe it goes right up to elite, right? I mean, again, that's the fun part about this. And so, yeah, I think for me the turning point for Kenny was day 4 into day 5 of training camp. Those first 3 days of camp, you can't describe how bad. I mean, Kenny Pickett looked awful. It's the reason why, if you go back and try to read tweets and articles from those first 3 days of camp, no one really wanted to talk about Kenny because it was probably too early to say the things that really needed to be said about Kenny Pickett, which is that, he was just a disaster. I mean, he looked like this kid just could not play football whatsoever. Happy feet, didn't see the field at all. Was throwing interceptions left and right, throwing to no one, running around with a chicken with his head cut off. I mean, it was just bad. But I thought from day 4 into day 5, everything started to slow down a little bit for him. He got a chance to run with the twos, and he looked like, even if it wasn't what it is now, it was competency. It was like, okay, well, that's, you can build on that. And I thought the nice thing for me with Kenny, and the reason why I am so impressed with him so far, is that it had that steady improvement continued throughout camp, to where I wasn't exactly shocked that he went out there against Seattle and put up the performance he did, right? Because he had built practice on practice on practice of getting better and better, to where, he looked like the kind of player against Seattle that was the best player on the field. Didn't deserve to be running with the threes in the first preseason game against the 3s and 4s of Seattle, running a game plan that, let's be honest, was relatively simple. It was a lot of quick throws, a lot of underneath stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm certainly starting to come around on Kenny. I am certainly riding the wave. Let's say that, right? I mean, I am all in on the Kenny Pickett hype train right now because, like I said, I'm enjoying the rocket ship. I just don't know when it ends.
Oh, I agree. I mean, myself included. I went to training camp. I didn't get to see the first part of it. I went towards the around Friday Night Lights. I actually only got to see one training camp, which was a Thursday night before Friday night. The Friday night got canceled, so that was unfortunate. But I got to see in there, and I saw a little bit, at that point, he was a little bit more seasoned in training camp. So I did see a little bit more of what he's putting out there today as far as, as he had a pass to, I believe it was Cody White in the corner there. That was a fade route to the corner. And I was like, man, his anticipation, his decisiveness, throwing the ball, he looks more than a rookie, in my opinion, at this stage. And it's just kind of transitioned onto the playing field. Now, there's a quarterback battle. Tomlin has come out here recently this week, talked about that he's not going to name a quarterback until after this preseason game. Do you really believe that, or do you think it's going to be Mitch Trubisky's job to lose?
Yeah, I still think it's Mitch's job to lose. I know Tomlin keeps saying everything he says is this is a battle, and I don't, let's not live on a throw basis. But for me, I'm going to judge his actions, and his actions are that Mitch Trubisky has taken every single first team rep, with few exceptions, right? There were a couple days in camp that Mason rotated with Trubisky, but there was never a day that Mason or Kenny took exclusively first team reps, which is what you would if this was a real quarterback battle. If you're thinking about this guy or that guy, you would want them to put them on a level playing field to see them with the same people against the same people. And Tomlin really hasn't done that, right? I mean, Kenny's the only one that even got first team reps in preseason, and he got 2 drives. Right? I mean, the other thing about this quarterback battle is if Kenny really did enter himself into that picture, I just can't get over the fact that he took him out at halftime. If you really think Kenny Pickett can be a starting quarterback in the league, and you think, okay, well, this guy, maybe he is, maybe I do need to sit Trubisky and play Kenny. Well, let's see him play into the third quarter. Like, I understand what Tomlin was saying after the game where this was the plan coming in, but maybe the plan, if Kenny's doing so well, maybe the plan needs to change. So, yeah, I still think it's Trubisky's job to lose. I'm not going to rule out Kenny because, once again, what if Kenny goes out there and gets a whole second half of reps and lights it up again? Does the exact same thing again. And this time, Trubisky throws an interception or two, or, he loses it in some way. Sure, I could see that happening. But otherwise, if Trubisky just does what he's been doing, I think he's the week 1 starter.
You don't think that potentially, if that is the case, let's just say that it is that Mitch Trubisky's job to lose, that the Steelers are kind of setting up Mitch Trubisky to lose with the fan base, because even if he goes out, performs okay, doesn't lose the job, but Kenny Pickett outperforms him in the eyes of the fan base. This is a battle. Everybody can see he's outperforming him. Don't you think that could, potentially cause a rift in the fan base, and the Kenny chants are going to come out a lot sooner, and potentially maybe, how do you think maybe that could, go for Mitch Trubisky, especially for his confidence in that situation?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. It's the tough part for Tomlin is that the schedule plays out in such a way that what you just said is very likely going to happen. Meaning that if Mitch Trubisky is the starter against Cincinnati, look, Cincinnati is one of the worst matchups, maybe the worst matchup the Steelers are going to have on their schedule the entire year. I mean, they just have not matched up well when it comes to this Bengals defense against the Steelers offense. Steelers scored 20 points total against that team a year ago, and then you remember that Monday night game. Well, let's not remember that Monday night game the year prior against Ryan Finley, right? But in that offense couldn't score in that game either. So this just from that matchup, the Bengals defense and how they match up against the Steelers team. You look at that Bengals defensive line, the Bengals front 7 against the Steelers offensive line. They're not going to be able to run the ball. That corner group is good. That safety group is good. And then you go over to the defense against Joe Burrow in that secondary, and it's the Steelers secondary just doesn't match up well against a loaded wide receiver room like that. They're not you can't just roll coverage to one side and say I'm going to take Jamar Chase out of the game, because guess what? We got T. Higgins, we got Tyler Boyd. So Trubisky's going to probably have some struggles in that game. The Steelers are probably going to lose in week 1, and we're going to get into a home game against the Patriots where all Mitch Trubisky's going to need to do is go 3 and out one time. And there's going to be boos. I know this because I was in the stadium. I was in Acrisure when Mason came out the first time. I mean, he was the Steelers fans tried to, and that was half a stadium. They were trying to boo him out of the stadium right there. And I think it was half because I think Steelers fans don't like Mason Rudolph, but half of it was because we were all there to see Kenny, right? And there was one reason why you bought a ticket to preseason game number 1 this year, and that was to see Kenny Pickett. And we weren't waiting until the second half of that. So, yeah, I think Tomlin is going to have a fan base that is going to be actively opposed to his plan here. If Kenny lights it up, if Kenny looks anything like he's done in the last 2 games, does anything like that against Detroit, Tomlin's going to be fighting an uphill battle to get the fan base to believe that Trubisky should be QB1.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's an uphill battle already, regardless of what happens. I mean, there was a scenario where You looked at what Mason Rudolph did in his final TD drive against the Detroit Lions, and kind of similar situation that Kenny Pickett was in. And, the excuses come out with Kenny's like, well, he's with third string offense, so he couldn't push it down the field. And not so much the same for Mason Rudolph. It's quite the opposite. They blame him for everything.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
it's kind of, it's sad. I'm a Mason Rudolph fan. I've been a supporter of his. I thought he had an opportunity to do something in this league until Earl Thomas changed that. And, it is what it is. It's time for, he didn't seize his opportunity. And I think that Kenny Pickett has a pretty good one this upcoming week. Now, what do you think that Kenny Pickett needs to prove now that he's ready to be a starter? I know he's done the short game. He's done the intermediate stuff. I haven't seen him push the ball down the field tremendously. Is that something that he really needs to show before they'll put him out there?
Yeah, I think, the more physically demanding the throw, the better for Kenny in this game. I know a lot of Steelers fans. I was on Locked On Steelers the other day with Chris, and we got a lot of comments because Chris and I basically said, look, I want to see him push the ball down the field more. A lot of fans, were upset at us in that analysis. Who said, "Why do you want Kenny to throw if the throw's not there? Why wouldn't you rather him just throw to the open receiver?" The reason is it's preseason, guys. Like, who cares? At the end of the day, I don't care if Kenny doesn't throw to the most open receiver, right? There's not. This is not a quiz that Kenny Pickett's taking where he has to choose the right answer. There could be multiple people open on a play, or there could be a guy who's 20, 30 yards down the field where it's more of a 50-50 ball. And yeah, the sure thing is underneath. And if this were a regular season game, maybe I want Kenny to check that thing down. But at the end of the day, if we're evaluating Kenny Pickett as a player, as who he is right now, what he evaluates to be as a starting quarterback, does he give the Steelers a better chance right now to win than Mitch Trubisky? I want to see him make some more, dangerous throws, or certainly throws down the field, certainly throws that are into tight windows where he's got to fit the ball in there. I want to see him under more duress where, I want to see, what I want to see out of him, and this is going to sound stupid because Kenny's been so good about this. I want to see Kenny Pickett get it wrong, meaning that I want Kenny to look at a defense and be wrong and see how he reacts to that. Right? Not that I want Kenny Pickett to be wrong, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to see how he reacts to a moment where, I thought they were in cover 2 and they're not. I thought I was going to have a one-on-one over here, and that's not what I have whatsoever. And how does he react to that? And how is he able to stay composed in that moment? Does he go back to the Kenny Wildman stuff? Because when you look back at his tape at Pitt, those kind of situations would happen, and then you go, okay, well, guess what? It's Sandlot time, right? And instead of just going through your reads, it's I'm going to roll out and I'm going to do something crazy. And he made that work. I also do want to see some Kenny Wildman stuff because we haven't seen that at all. He's been so disciplined about getting rid of the football. He's been so disciplined about knowing exactly where he wants to go and getting it there that I know he has this whole other part of his game where he's so good on the run. He's so good moving out of the pocket, so good ad-libbing after the play. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just you want to see him in all the scenarios you haven't already seen him in, I think is what we need to see out of Kenny, just to get a fuller picture of who he is as a quarterback.
Oh, I agree 100%. There's so much more. I was so disappointed when he didn't come in the third quarter. I understand that, Tomlin wanted to see him in varsity-like situations, but, we also would like to see Kenny Pickett in a more of a normal stance of the ebbs and flow of the game, as so to speak, in a regular flowing game, not so much the 2-minute. And so, that kind of led me to believe that, maybe perhaps this is Mitch's job to lose when he only had 2 drives. Yeah. One of the things that a lot of folks were talking about were, the issues with the front offensive line. And a lot of folks are saying that Kenny Pickett had the same offensive line. I agree. He was able to do more in those situations. Do you think that he outperformed Mitch Trubisky when it came to being under pressure?
That's a good question. He did. Although it's one of these things where, I mean, he did. He's outperformed Mitch Trubisky in every way possible, right? I mean, this goes back to the whole idea he hasn't thrown a bad ball yet. He hasn't done anything wrong yet. I mean, again, the first drive that he was in this game stalled only because he completed a 3rd and 8 pass to Chase Claypool, which got called back for penalty. Right. So he was under duress a couple times. I think he threw the ball 6 or 7 times and was he threw the ball 6 times because the 7th one was a spike and was under pressure 2 or 3 of those times. Right, where Mitch dropped back 10 times, was under pressure 6. I think Mitch has still done a good job under pressure. I don't want this to be like Mitch has done a bad job and Kenny's done a good job. Kenny's done better because, the results play itself out. The throw to Freiermuth down the seam was with the guy in his face. He read the linebacker leverage, threw it down the seam, an amazing play. I jumped out of my seat watching a preseason game. I was running around the house like like the Steelers just won the Super Bowl because I watched Kenny Pickett throw. In my own defense, I just didn't think Kenny at this point in his career was capable of that. So it's like, what, it was kind of an eye opener of like, wait, where are we on this rocket ship ride? Are we past Andy Dalton already? But what I think Mitch has done a good job is he's done a great job when under pressure of being a little bit of the Houdini stuff, right? Being able to avoid the rush and do a lot of the running quarterback stuff that we've seen Mitch do in Chicago. And I think it's a big reason why Tomlin wanted to bring him here. Is he's talked so much about wanting to have a more athletic quarterback and wanting to have a quarterback that can get outside the pocket and make some things happen with his feet. The one thing I want to see from Trubisky is just keep his eyes up. He's missing some throws down the field in those cases that he needs to see. So, Pickett's been better, but I don't want to say that Trubisky's been bad in that case.
No, yeah, I agree. I remember when I watched the game initially, and I thought to myself that, man, Mitch's pocket presence and his ability to move around in the pocket and get out of potential sacks was pretty good. I went back and watched it, and like you said, there was some throws that he could have had that, like Kenny Pickett had, to Pat Freiermuth. I was jumping up and down doing the same because, coming into the pros, Kenny Pickett was known for not being the guy to get rid of the ball and make the read right away. It was more scramble around. I think he had one of the longer times to throw than a lot of the other quarterbacks coming in. And so, seeing that and that development was really, really awesome. And I can't wait to see him with hopefully a better offensive line. With the offensive line being said, who are you more disappointed in at this point, the battle at left guard or James Daniels at right guard?
Probably James Daniels for sure. For sure, 100%. Because I came into the left guard battle, and it's like, all right, well, whoever wins this, it's still a crapshoot, right? It's one of those things where just because you win the job doesn't mean you're actually a good player. And I certainly thought that was going to be the case at left guard. Right? I was like, okay, even if Dotson wins, like Dotson's fine, but I don't know that he's a player that's going to be on this team 2-3 years from now. James Daniels, they paid $26 million to over 4 years. And he, we get on Kendrick Green, right? I mean, and for good reason. Kendrick Green has been very, very bad, but Kendrick Green is a second-year player who the Steelers probably just missed on.
Right.
There's like no harm, no foul. Okay, third-round pick, like not a great pick, but we can get out of this. You pay a guy $26 million over 4 years, and he's doing that. Yeah, that's a major, major issue because he was supposed to be the piece on the inside there that I felt like, okay, you have a stabilizing force in there. Maybe you figure out one of the tackles and you have at least a solid base with which to build from. I don't even know that they have that right now. And that's where I think the biggest worry has to be with the Steelers and this offensive line is if that offensive line is as bad as it was a year ago and you've now evaluated that Dan Moore can't play and Kendrick Green can't play. And oh, by the way, we paid James Daniels all this money and he also can't play. What does this team even do next year? I mean, we're going to watch another complete rebuild of this offensive line. That I think is the most concerning part. They almost need James Daniels to be good to at least give them something to build around going forward.
No, I agree. That like I can't remember who it was I was watching. They were talking about how the offensive line has had complete turnover as the coaching goes for the last 3 seasons, and it is a huge concern.
Kazora said that. I think it was Kazora on Steelers Depot said that. It
could have been, and. The thing is, when are they going to call Munchak back? That's kind of where everybody's going.
Blank check, whatever it takes, please.
Do you think he could fix this line? Or is this line something that is going to have to be redone yet again in the draft and free agency in the future?
I think it's probably the latter. Yeah, unfortunately. I think this is I don't want to say it's a lost cause entirely because there are some young players in this. And with Daniels, do I expect him to be this bad as we get into the regular season? I don't. I think he'll improve. The whole line will probably improve somewhat. But, I mean, again, what were we talking about? Like last week was, as we said, 60% of the time Mitch Trubisky was back to pass last week. He was under pressure. And 30% of the time Kenny Pickett was back to pass. He was under pressure. I mean, these are insane numbers. I mean, it'd be the worst offensive line. I don't know, maybe ever. I mean, I don't know. 60% pressure rate has gotta be one of the worst you'll ever see. So could Munchak fix it? Here's the problem for me. Here's the problem with that analysis. This was a bad offensive line against Seattle. It wasn't like they were good against Seattle. They had a good run blocking against Seattle, but Dan Moore was still getting beat. Kendrick Green was still getting beat, right? Daniels still had some plays against Seattle where you're like, yo, dude, what are you doing out there? And so all of those, I know that Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, is going to each one of those guys and saying, like, this is what you did wrong. We got to coach you up. We got to coach you up. We got to coach you up. And then they come out against in this last game against the Jaguars, and they're even worse. And I know that it's a big talking point this week of, Tomlin got in the meeting room and was, he was all bent out of shape about it. And calling people out. I don't know that this is a call people out in meetings. I don't know if this is a motivation thing. I think for a lot of guys on this team, it just comes down to talent. And so, yeah, I think this is going to need to be the end of the day, probably it's still going to be a rebuild.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's super concerning, and I hope they can get it done right and get it going right. Najee Harris touched the ball quite a bit last season, and he's going to be running behind this offensive line. And if we expect him to be healthy or be a productive member, this offensive line is definitely going to have to get better. But speaking of Najee and the load that he's taking, it's been reported that the Steelers are going to try to lighten his load this year. And Jalen Warren seems like a guy that could do it. What do you think about Jalen Warren? And if he ends up making the team, does he knock somebody off like Ant Mac or Benny Snell off the team?
I think he does. I mean, I suppose it's possible. I suppose it's possible they keep both Anthony McFarland and Jalen Warren, but I don't think it's likely because, you talked about it, right? Tomlin is known for his bell cow system. He wants his number one guy to take the vast majority of reps. And so really, I think when you're talking about running back 2, you're talking about a guy that is going to get 75 or 100 looks throughout the entire season. You're not going to split that between 2 guys. Or you're not going to go to like, okay, well, we're going to have Jalen Warren and Anthony McFarland. You don't need 2 guys for that. And that's why Benny Snell, I think, is almost a roster lock because of how good he is as a special teamer. I love Jalen Warren. I think Jalen Warren is a special talent that they've found here. I'll premiere a hot take that's kind of been simmering. I will say, Dave over at Steelers Sanctuary said this before I could say it, but I thought this during camp, and I was like, well, I don't want to say this too early because Steelers fans are going to get all over me about it, but I'll premiere it here. Jalen Warren is so good. Jalen Warren is the kind of running back that proves why you shouldn't take Najee Harris in the first round, right? Jalen Warren is the kind of running back that's like, this is why you don't take a Najee Harris in the first round. And I'm not saying that Jalen Warren is as good as Najee Harris, but I think there's like the gap between a Jalen Warren and a Najee Harris is not first round pick to undrafted guy, right? I mean, like Warren is really good. And what we've seen in the National Football League is that it's not impossible to find this guy. And I mean, look, the Steelers have not done a great job in the draft prior to this and finding, the complement guys. Benny Snell, not a hit. Anthony McFarland, maybe he's a hit this year, but he's probably going to get beat out by Jalen Warren anyway. So they hadn't done a great job to this point of finding that guy. I'm glad they did though, because it does give them a great compliment behind Najee Harris. And it does what it actually, the bigger thing I think it does for the Steelers is it gives me hope that even if Najee had to go down for a game or 2, that it wouldn't be the end of the world. This wouldn't be a disaster scenario for the Steelers. Whereas I had thought going into the year, if anything happens to Najee at any point throughout this season, the Steelers are DONE done. Stick a fork in them. Like, I don't know how they win football games if they're going to be starting either Benny Snell or Anthony McFarland for even a 2 or 3 game stretch, right? I just don't think this offense is capable of that. Jalen Warren, I think, is what he has shown to me, as long as he cannot fumble, what he's shown to me throughout the majority of camp and in these preseason games is I trust him. I trust him with a nice 20, 25 carry game to at least give me, maybe it's not Najee numbers, but close enough that it keeps this offense on time and on rhythm, which is what they're going to want to be with their running game this year.
No, yeah, I was super impressed and super pleased with his performances, and it started off with the talk coming out of training camp and his ability there, and then it transitioned to the stadium, and that just kind of shows that I think the Steelers got one there, and I think you're right. I think he's going to be on there. I don't know if they're going to cut Anthony McFarland or Benny Snell. I don't think that the Steelers are going to keep Najee Harris, Ant Mac, Benny Snell, and Derek Watt. That's a lot of running backs for a team that are trying to keep more offensive line, defensive line, and linebackers. So, it's concerning as far as outside of that and which one. It was concerning going into this season as far as the backup running position. But I think Jalen Warren is definitely kind of lowered down that concern a little bit. And so we're getting a little bit long in the tooth here on this episode. So I have one last question for you, and then let everybody know where they can find you. My question is, and I ask everybody that comes on, please give us a score prediction for this upcoming matchup with the Detroit Lions and versus the Steelers.
Who I like that. Okay, well, here's the thing. You got a quarterback battle. If Tomlin really wants to see varsity play out of his quarterbacks, let him light it up. Let him throw. Let each guy do their thing. I'm gonna say the Steelers are gonna drop 30 again in Acrisure. I'm gonna go. Let's go 35. We'll go 35-17. I like the Steelers to win big here. I like this offense, but I don't know if we're going to see Mason in this one. Even if we do, I like Mason Rudolph right now. I mean, I enjoy that he's kind of turned into a quarterback that I don't feel like. I used to really get on Mason. I don't feel that way anymore. He's a fine player at this point. So even if he gets out there, I trust him to score some points. So yeah, I'll go 35-17 for the Steelers. And I appreciate you having me on. You guys can find me on YouTube, Steeler Country with Tony Serino. You can also find me on AFC North Talk, the roundtable show all about the AFC North. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you coming on again. With that being said, guys, I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers. Peace.